be, one day, a fond, distant memory. Simon ran along the flat pinnacle of the rooftops, following the roar of a beast. While he did so, he let his ears guide his direction, while his eyes were focused on his feet. In his mind he saw how the crow-feathered Lady Eileen had run similarly. He stopped and looked down into the lit streets. The night was cloudy and especially dark, but a street lamp served to adequately light the town. A large brute was walking on 2 legs, with a massive quilt over its back. At least, it looked like something of the sort. A head was moving around frantically in random directions beneath it, as it paced outside the door to the corner building. It grunted and growled loudly, and with a hauntingly human quality of irritation to it. He flipped out his bow and quickly drew an arrow and placed his right foot forward, then released it. When it pierced into the back of the creature, it fell forward and on all fours rushed to the side with grotesque speed, uncanny for its massive form. The end of the quilt, formed like a hood, looked up at him, yellow eyes glowing beneath. 2 freakish hands with claws emerged from beneath, and it looked like a massive spider as it moved with its limbs spread out. He had already drawn a second arrow and fired it, hitting its shoulder. It jerked by the impact, then unbothered proceeded to scurry over the stone towards the building exterior, where it leapt up on the roof adornment of a door. Simon managed to fire another arrow at the massive beast, the size of a small carriage, now climbing its way up the houses. As it came up onto the roof, it stood on its hind legs, holding out its clawed hand at its side in a harrowing display of dominance. Simon folded the bow back into a blade. He saw the massive maw of teeth beneath the hood. It lunged into the air and threw itself towards him, attempting to capture him with the razor fangs. Simon stepped to the side as it crashed into the roof plating. He slashed 2 times. The first cut shallowly somewhere at its side. The latter cut at its legs, considerably deeper. It roared loudly, tossing its head back, and screamed to the heavens before spinning around to sweep its claws after him. But he had already jumped back, out on a more narrow part of the roof. He transformed back the bow and shot an arrow that it avoided by darting to the side, lunging on its hands and jumped towards him. He jumped out further onto a precarious pointed roof of a tower, stepping with 1 foot onto a small protrusion in a decorative pattern, while holding on to the spire at the very tip. The beast had difficulty balancing on the narrow platform, as it landed rather violently, and it almost fell off. As it scrambled to turn around, clawing at the plates to keep itself up, Simon spun around the spire and jumped back onto the main roof, folded the blade back and lunged at the beast, thrusting the sword forward. He had intended to pierce its head, but he missed and buried it into the shoulder. Be it by self-sacrificial instinct or some uncontrollable spasm wrought by the blade, the beast flailed with its other arm and tossed itself off the building, sweeping Simon along into the fall. the beast hit its back into a balcony, making Simon tumble away from him in the fall, resulting in him landing rather poorly on his side. The beast landed flat on its stomach and was quick to rise up, glaring towards him. When Simon tried to stand, his left leg ached so severely he was prohibited to do so. Instead, he remained low to the ground, his left hand planted in the ground, while the other held tight to the blade. When the beast swiped down with its hand onto him, he spun to the side, slashing at its arm, then spun fully around and rose up primarily on his right leg, which brought him close to the very front of the beast. As he stood, he pierced the blade straight up into its throat. Its entire body hunched forward and the backbone shot up. The mouth opened wide in a roar as blood spewed from it. One of its massive hands pushed him aside and he tumbled away, rolling one extra time just to create distance. When he composed himself, still low to the ground and not supporting himself too much with the damaged leg, the beast had completely slumped forward, trying to raise itself up as blood pooled out from under the cloth. It made horrific gurgling groans. Incapable of doing anything else, the fiend turned its head to glare at him. Furious and glowing eyes stared at him as he stood and limped towards it. The entire body twitched with anger up until the point he plunged the sword into the back of its neck, which finally slew it. He fell backwards, taking several relieved sighs. His left leg pulsated and was wet and warm. He did not know what was wrong with it, nor did he care. He just needed to hobble his way around the street corner and just a bit further into the first alley. When he stood back up in the dream, he twisted around his left foot. He anticipated pain, but it was normal and he chuckled to himself. Neat. Ahead he saw the crow-feathered woman stand before the headstones, talking with a tall man. They both turned to look at him and he approached. Good, dreaming to ya, I suppose. He could not tell if Eileen was making some sort of expression under her mask, but her body remained inanimate by his comment. The man, however, smiled friendly at him. I suppose it is. Gascoigne. He reached out his hand. Ah, Simon. A friend of Henrik's? That I am. My father-in-law. Eileen started to kneel down by the headstone, and Simon interrupted himself to address her. Oh, you are heading out? That's not over yet. True enough. I just managed to survive a big bugger. But I left Johannem with one less beast. Good on ya. Suppose it's off to the doll with ya then. Ah, yes it is. Well, good hunting to ya then. Oh yes, thank you. She reached out her hand to the little messengers. And good luck to you as well. She vanished before the stone, leaving him alone with Gascoigne. They glanced at each other, immediately causing them to look away. Simon was about to excuse himself when the man spoke.
So you know Henrik well?
Oh no, met once or twice. Told me about the old days, before Ludwig became captain. He isn't here?
Gascoigne looked around. He had a brave carefreeness about him, akin to how he sometimes saw Ludwig.
No. He has been, though.
Heard he was in Old Yarnam. Must have dreamed to have survived that.
He made a casual nod in agreement.
Not something he talks about. But I think so too. But as you probably know, it's not something anyone talks about.
Yeah, no. Only feels real when you are here.
He nodded again.
So, have you spoken with German?
I have.
Did he tell you much? Said there was many nights to come, and to prepare to match the prey or something. I guess I mean, why now? What's so different about the hunt?
Gascoigne crossed his arms and looked over to the open workshop door. The doll emerged in the opening, and he waved simply by raising his hand while they were still crossed. She made an elegant but mild curtsy. Then he looked back at Simon.
Well, I haven't been here long myself. 7 nights or so now. Hunted every single one of them. But, I believe the beasts are growing larger. They aren't like they used to be, as I'm told. And I can see why hunters once were successful without this dream. Now, though...
I hear from Eileen.
He made a motion towards the stone, but Gascoigne nodded, showing he likely was somewhat acquainted already.
Well, she is concerned about some hunters. Even clerics becoming beasts.
Hard to imagine. But I would say, if that were the case, wouldn't dreaming hunters such as us be in all the more demand?
Simon had already suspected and subscribed to the idea, making it not sound that surprising to himself. And with the calm tone Gascoigne had while speaking, the same likely applied to him.
Sounds reasonable. You'll have to watch yourself out there then.
You too, Simon. Keep the faith close to your heart. I feel it more important than ever, seeing how many have lost sight of its simple message.
Aye. And what message might that be?
He asked a bit sarcastically while Gascoigne walked over to the headstone. He turned to him with a smirk.
Why? Fear the old blood, of course.
Then he reached out for the messengers while Simon waved. After he had vanished, he walked up to the doll who had stood still in the doorway hands folded over her dress at the waist.
Welcome home, good hunter.
Hello there. Had a slip up with a beast just now.
Oh my.
Well, you know, it's nothing. I could just come back here.
Isn't it sweet of them, the little ones?
It is. Was hoping I could have some of your blessings.
You wish me to turn your echoes into strength?
Whatever they wish to impart to me, I'll gladly have it. It seemed she was ready to smile. She looked away from him briefly, as if she tried not to smile.
Whatever you wish to receive, the graceful moon will give it to you.
Oh. In that case, I would like to be a bit more dexterous.
Very well, good hunter. Give me your hand and shut your eyes.
Eileen walked slowly in the path among the bushes. She was noticed quite instantly by Ludwig, who sat on the steps up to the old workshop. When she could not find him in the standard church workshop, and with no one in the know of his whereabouts, she acted on a strong suspicion. She had on occasion seen him sneak off to somewhere, into the lower levels of the workshop tower that nowadays provided the only access route. Ah, you come here too?
Well,
she quickly recalled that the statement, funny enough, was partially true.
Sometimes.
Me too. I think about the old times, when the night only frightened the adolescents. Now it is different. She had no good reason for being there. There was a trembling nerve within her, for the hopes that he would not inquire why exactly she had come. She would rather have the very simple cause hidden from him. She approached and sat down next to him. She took off her beaked mask. I wish I knew him, Master German. I was but a prospector in his time. I thought not of hunters. I thought the true glory lay in aiding the church. I still do. But had I known, I would have liked to become acquainted with the fellow. Do you know of him?
Little, I'm afraid. Only what is told. A very focused man, clear-minded.
I wonder what drew him. What made him tick? I say that the captain of the hunters must have their own very special guidance. He aimlessly fingered over the hilt of the sword, laying in his lap. It must have been something incredible
indeed. I wonder if we even are the least alike.
Well, I wouldn't know. But you both lead the hunters admirably.
His eyes peered down forlornly. She regretted her words, despite not knowing if it had been them that caused his shifting mood.
The hunters,
he said, and let his words hang long in the air.
Some are unhinged. Some may not be the noble clerics I thought they were.
He made a melancholy chuckle.
But that is to be expected. Not everyone is a saint. Some have to fight hard to keep their monsters at bay.
Eileen wished she was better with people, especially now.
It's not your fault. The death is better for them. It is mercy.
He suddenly stood, the blade clanging onto the steps, and he walked off the rise.
They are not drunkards. I know that this affliction is no jest, but not all is so easily explained with good and evil.
She hoped the frustration he now displayed was not meant in her direction.
Would you cut down the nerve-wracked hunter? As afraid of the beasts as the people? Would you cut him down for harshly implementing strict methods in the purpose of keeping them safe?
No. What do you mean?
He slouched where he stood, then moved to take hold of his blade. Grabbing it, he looked upon it searchingly for a moment.
Fear has taken the town. Was it ever worth fearing the old blood? If the fear evolved into this mess. Oh, how they fear. I cannot blame the hunters. They too battle with it. Have you ever been close to a normal person, turning into a fiend of the blood?
She shook her head. His sad eyes met hers, still holding the blade. He turned the blade downward, letting the tip rest in the cracks of the stones.
Many of them have. Walking the streets after that is never the same. And the people see them as grim executioners. Hunters in the night that indeed only thirst for blood. Where did we go so wrong as to earn this brand of fear, I wonder?
There was a sudden impulse to hold on to him, to share and steep in his languish. Yet he still bore the stoic face, despite her being able to now see through it, or at least know what truly lay beneath. She stood, hesitating several times in her head, but eventually acted. She rested her hands over his, where they lay over the pommel. Him being only slightly taller, their eyes locked with each other. Her green, his brown. He eventually peered down at his sword. Very faintly, turquoise sprites danced over the blade, ever so gently. It made him smile. A smile he kept when he looked back at her. The fog lay pleasantly over the unseen landscape, rolling between the strange pillars surrounding the solitary workshop. In the waking world, there was so much occupying her mind. Not that it bothered her. She quite enjoyed the sense of responsibility. Rather, in the dream, everything was just still. The idea of the things that could induce both fear and amusement was not existent here. It was more comprehensible than she would have imagined. She adored it. However much she tried to think about her duties or even the mundanity of her next meal, they just vanished into the fog below, leaving her in peace. Careful steps on stone approached her where she stood along the fenced edge. It was the doll that came to stand beside her. What lies beyond? How is it beneath the grey? And what hides behind the mountainous horizon? I wouldn't know, good hunter. I have never thought about it. Don't you wonder sometimes? No. Perhaps I should. I wonder if there is more to this dream. I find it strangely hard every time to leave. Not that I don't want to go back, but this place has really saved me. But do you not want to wake up? You are only dreaming. I know, yet this seems more real to me. You ought not to anchor to a dream. You might lose yourself. Good hunter, would you tell me something? What? Is there not something you always think about while you are here? Hunters have told me that in their dreams they see the things they most want. So, now that you are dreaming, what is it that you see? Eileen had never wanted for much. A closeness with the great beyond, with the lofty dream. But that was the grander goal. And she knew what the doll meant. It was a hard question for someone who slew her own peers. She always imagined she wanted something like this. That through her merciful slaughter would she achieve her dream. But that was not what appeared to her first. Just before her sensible thoughts, filled with intelligent reasoning, there had been another thought. One of those sensations the mind instinctively goes to without one's permission. The kind of thoughts that tell of one's most inner being. And she had seen a man. She smiled at the silliness. Though she gave the doll no reply, she seemed to have noticed.
Whatever it is, keep it close and dear. It will make your awakening all the more pleasant.
The doll left her alone, trotting gracefully back to where she normally would greet her. Eileen lingered by the edge a moment longer, not quite wanting to leave just yet. She perused the grounds, idly walking just to revel in the dreamscape. As she walked up towards the secondary entrance into the workshop, she noticed, down a little path among the vegetation, the backside of German's wheelchair. Wanting to exchange a word with him, she approached, but noticed him asleep. She thought she could postpone the conversation, and was about to silently walk back, when she heard him mutter in his sleep.
Oh, Lawrence. Where has everyone gone? I hear no familiar names from the hunters. Does your search really take that long?
In the darkness of night, there is simply only moonlight to guide the way. On the nights of the hunt, one was blinded by many things, despite many being able to navigate the darkness perfectly well. Ludwig knew that only the stoutest and bravest could perform the duty of a hunter. But not only should they be courageous, but compassionate as well. What truly blinded a man on the night of the hunt was his own mind. The sympathy carried for one's fellow men and women as beasts threatened their lives, the lack of fear to step between the beast, clawing at the door of the innocent, and most importantly, to have a sense of uncompromising duty. So when he would rush off towards the scream in the night, he knew some would watch him leave scoffing, while others would praise his bravery. Leading by example could create brave heroes and foolish demises. The outcome seldom solely relies on the person's intentions, only the act itself. He had turned down an alleyway bereft of lantern light. He could only see in front of him thanks to the cold light of the moon. The way was littered with barrels, bottles, crates and other rubbish. He did make out an opening that did not contain any light, but did hold the source of the feverish scratching by large claws on stone. He walked quickly, as a full-on sprint would likely only trip himself in the poor light and footing. Eventually it grew darker, likely wrought by roaming clouds. He continued despite seeing nothing. He hit his foot against something hard and almost fell. It made him halt and feel around, bothered by the disability. Then light returned, but no light of fire or heavenly moon, but pure turquoise light of his moon, slowly gathering strength on his blade. He held it to his face and watched, enthralled as ever, on the little sprites that danced over the blade. He gazed into the abyssal depth of the blade, and he closed his eyes. New focus found him, and he started to move. No longer acting on his own conscious thoughts, but raw instincts, as guided by the moonlight. When he opened his eyes, he stood before a terrible fiend. Fur all over, large arms with claws and long muscle. But with the moonlight dancing all around, he did not become petrified when it roared at him. He might as well not have heard it. He simply stepped forward and slashed immaculately, sending a wave of light towards it. It exploded with light, and the tall brute stumbled backwards. Once he advanced, it seemed to become frightened, as if realizing its great power of wielding fear evaporated entirely in the moonlight. There was a clawed hand that struck at him, but he simply leaned his body to the side, stepped under it and pierced forward. Once the turquoise light faded, he saw that a yellow shimmer was absent in the accursed eyes. Blood stained his garb, and the beast lay crumpled to the ground, dead. He looked to the wall in front of him, showing the bars of a window having almost been torn off. He felt fatigued and started to breathe heavy. It did strain him, but would never cause him harm. New sounds were brought to his attention. Dampened voices, only perceivable by the fact they were talking loudly and eagerly. As his moonlight still shone the way, he continued on forward between the houses where he saw faint orange light. On the street on which he emerged stood a gathered group further down. He approached them without contemplating the situation. 3 black-garbed church hunters stood at a doorway of a house along the street. In the doorway stood a man. One of the hunters grabbed his arm hard and jerked him out. A woman's cry was heard, but no woman was seen. "Hunters!" he called out as he approached. All eyes turned immediately towards him. The hunter let go of the man's arm, and he tumbled backwards into the embrace of a woman, stumbling out after him. Ludwig stopped and stared at the black-garbed hunters, who stared wordlessly back at him. All their faces were shadowed by their cowl and hat. He looked to the pair in the door, who gave him a desperate look before swiftly fleeing back and closing behind them. "Hunt with me." He promptly resumed his walk. One grunted something that could have been a sort of response, but the words were lost along the way. He noticed how they did not walk straight. One could have been wounded and thus made a slight limp. Another was plain irregular and would slack behind only to burst out running. The third paced all over the street behind him. Ludwig did not desire to speak with them much. Not to ask what they had been doing. Would he have noticed if they lied? He heard a clattering from the dark corners. He held out his hands for them to stop and be attentive. They ignored him and eagerly walked to the sounds. As they grew close, he was about to finally comment on their behavior, but beasts flew upon them. A long and lanky humanoid fiend with scarce hair growth over the naked body, towering at double their height, threw itself at the one closest. The hunter leapt back and transformed his cleaver to immediately retaliate. Ludwig grabbed his sword and steeled himself to provide support. From the opposite side of the street, flanking the other two, came 3 more giant fiends, crawling and jumping like freakish man-dogs. The surprise startled him, and instead of leaping into the fray, he held his sword in front of his face. His focus fell upon the cosmic light that developed the silvery blade, and he was once more pulled into the comforting, stellar darkness. The other hunters had already fearlessly lunged ahead to engage the prey. He remained in place as one of the beasts jumped at him. By resting the sword on his back, he ducked the monster and spun around while standing up, slicing simultaneously at the beast, having landed behind him. Around him flew the little sprites, blurring in and out of the darkness. As the beast turned, it did not appear distracted by them, but neither did Ludwig. Their presence soothed his fears and made him calm in the loud cacophony of the hunt, which seemed only like a distant breeze to him. As well as the distracting streetlights and movements happening all around was inconsequential to him. Like the sprites dampened his sight and illuminated only where he aimed his focus. The fiend remained in place, as the distance between them was somewhat significant, but Ludwig shortened it ferociously quickly by thrusting the sword forward, quicker than the beast could ever anticipate. As the blade pierced into its body, light exploded around it. Blood splattered onto his face and he closed his eyes. He spat away the fetid beast blood from his mouth and blinked his eyes open. Around him he saw much larger beasts. The hunters were gone, and so were the beasts that had ambushed them. His blade was still plunged deep, still shining, into the massive and horrid horned head of one of the large fiends that had not been there before. This one was larger than the previous one and did not share the same traits. Had the fury of battle taken him so? The rest of the body had been cut profusely and repeatedly. 2 equally gargantuan beasts like the one before him stood a bit away with their splitting jaws hanging open in hunger. He could only assume the worst for his fellow hunters, although he did not see their bodies. Once again he trusted in the grace of the holy moonlight and held it before his face, emptying himself of fear and doubt, as well as giving a silent prayer for those fallen in the hunt. He swung with the blade diagonally downward, sending a bright, cleaving streak of moonlight at one of the beasts. Then followed up with a second strike upwards. The two light waves impacted with the beast, so it stumbled back, almost falling, while the second jumped at him. He only heard its roar, otherwise a piercing, blood-curdling sound that would linger in the ears, as if it was a distant, angry voice. When he calmly stepped to the side and turning towards the fiend, he was not faced by the force of impact just inches from him. He had already moved the blade up while stepping away, and now brought it down like a comet into the ground, where light engulfed them. Although Ludwig remained in place, the beast was violently pushed by it. He was beset by the other beast who threw its enlarged hand down at him. As he spun to the side, he cut with the sword upwards into the wrist, then immediately ducked down to avoid the swiping hand of the second beast. Once he stood up from the low stance, he spun around and sent a light wave towards them, then thrusted the sword straight into the ground. As if a blessing from the sky graced him, light flowed down at him into the sword and created an abyssal pillar beaming straight up from the ground where one of the beasts stood. All the while he remained calm, unfazed by the fury, and only hearing their screams subtly. It was as if he could hear their movements. Everything was more clear in the light of the sprites. But suddenly he was standing somewhere else, when the light of the pillar faded. One of them lay decapitated, and the other was slouched over, turning the horned head his way with a growl. He simply held up the sword in front of his face, peering back at the monstrosity from behind the glowing moonlight sword.
Open up! Open up the gate! The captain has returned!
Arms crossed, tired of these cruel nights, Eileen had waited a long time for the sun to finally dawn. Had it not been for a pleasant dream, whatever mercy was there for the poor and delusional hunters as they bloodied the streets? But hunters becoming beasts? How could it be? Why had they only in the past developed a sickly obsession and not fully fledged beasthood? The gate grinded open, and approaching was a blood-bathed Ludwig, with merely 3 hunters following behind. His black hair was wet with blood and lay smeared on his garb. Dried blood dotted his face, and his previously white garb was white no longer, defiled by the pungent blood. He saw her, but did not make a remark. She firmly walked up to him and tugged his damp arm and dragged him along. None protested or even expressed curiosity, but apathetically carried on with whatever they were doing. She took him aside, him willingly following, to the fence of the round plaza.
What is the matter with you, Ludwig?
He appeared dazed, in all rights tired of a night's hunt. but it was a sickly weariness.
What is this?
Eileen,
I cannot if you are tired. Look around you. Look at yourself. What is happening to this town?
His head slumped down, and she calmed herself.
What happened to the other hunters tonight?
I don't recall.
How so?
You know, it can be a mess out there.
Sod it. I know better. You and I are currently doing the exact same work. Killing hunters.
No. The beast grows. My hunters do what they can.
They are not your hunters, Ludwig. They stopped being long ago. Please say the truth. Why are there even so many beasts to begin with?
His eyes were wide and looked down at her. They desperately darted back and forth. She noticed how little shining sparks danced over his shoulder. His gaze steadied itself, and he started to turn towards his sword. She stopped him by a guiding touch under his chin.
Look at me now. That accursed light. It has you blind, Ludwig. Do you not see your hunters turning? And why? Because you are becoming the worst of them all.
The lights vanished, and he suddenly had a very sharp, perceptive appearance beneath the crimson dye.
Me? I know, but it must be done. It keeps them safe. Keeps them from sullying their own hands.
A thought occurred in her head. A quick one and quite meaningful, were it to be true. Its appearance had her stagger a step back from him involuntarily.
The blood, Ludwig. It is the blood, is it not? The hunters yearn for blood, not the hunt.
No. Eileen, none are addled with it. Do not see us as such.
He followed her with an approaching step, surely meant as a reassuring gesture, but appeared like anything other.
There is precious blood now flowing from the church. The blood of a goddess. It keeps us. The end of the scourge is finally upon us. Soon you do not need to hunt, and I just have a little more left. Then the night will be over for good.
Her fears had come true. The doll had been wrong. This was the nightmare, inhabited only by flesh-hungry beasts,
and blood-addled hunters.
Oh, Ludwig, you are wrong. Can't you see? Always fear the old blood.
He looked sadly upon her, his eyes tentatively fixed on the holes in her mask, trying to find her somewhere inside. The real her. He did not succeed, and slung the blade on his shoulder. A solitary, dim, shining sprite flickered for a moment next to him. I hope to finally, truly see you without the mask. When these mysterious nights are finally done and over.
Simon's bowblade. Choice weapon of Simon, one of the first healing church hunters. Simon despised firearms, and so the church workshop had this specially fashioned to his liking. The large curved blade serves as a bow when transformed. But aside from a few close friends, Simon was scoffed at for his choice of arms. For who would dare face the beasts with a measly bow?